Veterans Day Assembly. I would like to extend a special welcome to our veterans that are in attendance. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us and be the examples of those that we honor on Veterans Day. At this time, I would like to introduce Mr. Vaughn and the Waseon High School Choir, who will be singing the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed, and the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, choir. I would now like to introduce Mr. Clark and the Waseon High School Band. They will be playing Patriotic Spectacular. Thank you, band. I feel it is important each year for us to remember the sacrifices that were made and are being made to give us the freedoms we have and enjoy. As you are all well aware, these freedoms have been tested and continue to be tested every day. I encourage each and every one of you to show your appreciation to those that have and those that continue to serve and protect our freedoms. I would now like to introduce Waseon High School students Monica Betts and Alex Guerrero, who will share the history of Veterans Day and the importance of honoring our veterans.
Today we gather in recognition of Veterans Day. What is Veterans Day and how did it originate? In 1921, an American soldier, his name known but to God, was buried on a Virginia hillside overlooking the Potomac River in the city of Washington. The Arlington National Cemetery is the burial site of this unknown World War I soldier and became the personification of dignity and reverence for America's veterans. Similar ceremonies occurred earlier in England and France, where an unknown soldier was buried in each nation's highest place of honor. These memorial gestures all took place on November 11th, giving universal recognition to the celebrated ending of World War I hostilities at 11 a.m. November 11th, 1918, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. The day became known as Armistice Day. Armistice Day officially received its name in America in 1926 through a congressional resolution. It became a national holiday 12 years later by similar congressional action. If the idealistic hope had been realized that World War I was the war to end all wars, November 11th might still be called Armistice Day. But shortly after the holiday was proclaimed, World War II broke out in Europe and shattered the dream. 16.5 million Americans took part. 406,000 died. The families and friends of these dead longed for a way to honor their memory. In answer to the dilemma of how to pay tribute to those who had served in this latest Great War came in a proposal made by Representative Edwin K. Reese of Kansas. Change Armistice Day to Veterans Day, and make this an occasion to honor those who have served America in all wars. President Eisenhower in 1954 signed a bill proclaiming November 11th as Veterans Day, and he called for Americans everywhere to rededicate themselves to the cause of peace. Additional significance was added to Veterans Day in 1958 when 2 more unidentified American war dead were brought to Arlington Cemetery from overseas and interred beside the World War I soldier, who was killed in World War II and the other in Korea. A law passed in 1973 provided for the future interment of an unknown American.
Today, freedom is looked upon as the right that we inherit when we are born. What we must remember is that many have paid a price, a severe price, to obtain this freedom and to keep it. No other country on earth allows its people the liberties that the United States of America allows. There is, and perhaps there always will be, conflict in this world. But the United States fortunately enjoys peace and freedom like no other country. Like other great things of value, this security did not come cheaply. Part of the cost has already been paid by Americans who answered the military duty call when their country needed them. They served in numerous wars, earning the special distinction veteran. But another part of freedom's cost must continue to be paid long after the guns have been silenced. The debt is owed to the Americans' veterans. Some need their country's help, even as their country once needed theirs, to readjust, to recover from wounds, or to overcome hardships of age and infirmity. We must need and ask nothing in repayment of their sacrifices. Let us continue to help veterans in need with the greatest possible compassion and efficiency. For the rest, since they ask no special thanks, we can best pay tribute to them this day by recognizing what they achieved and in joining them in the resolve to keep America strong and free.
Thank you, Monica and Alex. Today's speaker would not be possible without the work of one individual. I would like to introduce and thank Sherry Ann Franks for all of her work to make this possible. Please welcome Sherry Ann to share a few words and introduce our speaker.
Mr. Leatherman for allowing us to bring you Veterans Day program. Each and every one of you will be receiving a bookmark that was donated by Tomahawk Printing, and I would like to thank them for their continued support for this program and their generosity. Today we are observing Veterans Day, a day that we remember all veterans who have fought to keep each and every one of you free, something that we take for granted too many times. We are truly blessed to have so many veterans here with us today, but we must also remember those who laid down their lives. I would like to say a big thank you to Mr. Nick Seward, who is a Tenora Guidance Counselor and a Purple Heart recipient, for introducing our speaker to me. Mr. Brzezinski was in the United States Air Force from 1980 to 1989. He was stationed at Air Force bases in Utah as well as Illinois. He was an aircraft fuel systems mechanic, worked on F-16s, and taught at the tech school. He received 2 Air Force Accommodation Medals, 2 Good Conduct Medals, and was Maintenance Professional of the Year 1984 for the 388 Component Repair Squadron. I think what sets Mr. Brzezinski apart from every other veteran here today is one thing. He is a Gold Star father. And for those that don't know what a Gold Star father is, it's someone who has lost their loved one in the war. We appreciate him for coming. As you may know or may not know, Saturday was the Marine Corps Veterans birthday, and yesterday was actually Veterans Day, and today is his son's heavenly birthday. So we appreciate him very much coming to share Lance Corporal Taylor Brzezinski's story. Mr. John Brzezinski.
Thank you. First thing I would like to do is thank all the veterans here. I am also a veteran, as Sherry Ann said, that I served. I'm from Fairfield, Ohio, which is a northern suburb of Cincinnati, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here to talk. I graduated from Fairfield High School and was not a very scholarly type of student, and I was looking for something to do, something that would better my future, and so I decided that I would talk to all the recruiters. I worked at the local YMCA as a lifeguard, and I took care of the pool, and all the recruiters came into that YMCA, so I got to talk to them, got to know them, and decided I was going to join the Air Force. So in August of 1980, I got on an airplane for the first time in my life, and I flew from Cincinnati to Texas to go to my basic training at Lackland Air Force Base in Texas. And once I finished my basic training in Texas, I went to a base in Illinois that's not there anymore called Chanute Air Force Base, and I took a class in a tech school there, aircraft fuel systems maintenance. I worked on fuel pumps and manifolds and fuel tanks to contain the aircraft fuel to keep the aircraft moving. And I graduated from my tech school at the end of 1980, December sometime, and went home and spent the holidays with my family. And that first week of January in 1981, I took everything that I had in 2 duffel bags and my dress uniforms and a garment bag, and I flew to Salt Lake City. And when I landed, I knew nobody. So I stood there with my 2 duffel bags and my dress uniforms, not knowing a soul, and got up to the base and worked with the 388th Tactical Fighter Wing, and it was the first active duty wing to have F-16s, and so all my hands-on experience was F-16s. In 1984, I was blessed with a son, and my son's name is Taylor. He was born at the Air Force Hospital there at Hill, and then in July of '85, I moved back to Chanute to become an instructor of that very same tech school where I went. And so we moved to Illinois, which was a little closer to Ohio and easier to get home to see my parents. I didn't see them that much in those 5 years where I was out in Utah, so it was nice. So in January of 1989, my enlistment was up, and my father was having some health challenges, so I thought I should go home and try to help my mom with my dad. And so we moved back to Fairfield, and my son Taylor went to the same schools that I went to, had some of the same teachers that I had some of the same coaches that I had. And it was truly a blessing. And so in 2001, on September the 11th, we watched the most horrific thing that could ever happen when the Twin Towers fell in New York City through an act of terrorism. And we discussed it as a family. What should our response be? Morally, ethically, militarily, politically? And so, as time progressed and Taylor was getting to be a senior in high school, he came to us and he said, I decided after I graduate, I want to join the military. So I encouraged him to explore all of his options with all the branches, and he came home and he says, I want to be a Marine. And I still encouraged him to explore all of his options and look at whatever else was out there, and he said, I want to join the Marines. He told me, he says, Dad, I want to live a 4-year adventure, and then I want to come back, I want to go to college, and I want to become a special needs teacher and a coach. And I thought that was really uncharacteristic for him on one hand, other than he helped the kids at school, but I just didn't really think that that was, you know, what I thought he would do. So anyhow, he was not, he had not quite graduated, so I told him, I said, you know, make an informed decision, take the time that you need, but when you make your decision, I want you to come clearly tell me, clearly articulate for me why you want to be a Marine. And so a couple weeks later, he came back and he says, okay, let's have that conversation. I want to tell you why I want to be a Marine. And so I said, okay. He says, so what were you? And I said, I was in the United States Air Force. And he says, the operative word is was. He said, Dad, don't you know, once a Marine, always a Marine? And I'd heard that. And I'm like, yeah, I understand that. And then he proceeds to tell me that he wanted to be part of an elite team. And the Marine Corps is one of the smallest military branches, and it is a very elite team. And I understood that. And then he said to me, I want to make sure that I personally have what it takes to make it through Marine Corps boot camp. And I remember being 18 years old and thinking I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof. And I understood where he was coming from and what he was saying. So I blessed his decision. Now, at the same time, I encouraged him to learn a trade in the Marine Corps. And he told me he wanted to be a grunt. He said, I want to go live a 4-year adventure. That's all I want to do. I want to go live a 4-year adventure. And I said, well, son, you probably will. So he left for boot camp in October, November timeframe of 2003 and graduated from Parris Island, South Carolina, Marine Corps Recruit Depot. And we went down to his graduation, and it was remarkable, the transformation. He was never the biggest kid, he was never the tallest kid, but he really transformed into a young man. And so after he graduated from boot camp, he came home for a couple days, and so this was beginning of 2004, and then he was stationed at Camp Geiger in North Carolina to go to the School of Infantry, and we went down to his graduation for the School of Infantry, which wasn't as big of a ceremony as boot camp was, but they gave him about a half an hour to mill about and see the families, and then they lined up about half of the guys that graduated and marched him off. Taylor was not one of them. I said, Taylor, where are they going? He said, they're going to Iraq, immediately to Iraq. So they graduated the School of Infantry and they left the next day. But he was assigned to the 3rd Battalion, 8th Marine Regiment at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. But his unit had already deployed to Haiti. Back in 2004, the president of Haiti was President Aristide, and he survived a military coup. There was a group of rebels that tried to come in and kill him and take over the country. And our Marines, about 900 of them, 3rd Battalion, 8th Marine Regiment, went and kept the peace. So they were already there, so he went and joined them in Haiti. And he was there in Haiti for about 6 or 8 months, and they walked the streets of Haiti every day for 8 hours, just trying to keep the peace as they could establish a new government. And only one shot was fired, and that shot happened to be received by a Marine that was a friend of his by the name of Will Hamilton. And Will got shot in the forearm and survived his wound. It just happened that there was a private aircraft that was bringing aid for a mission at the airport there at Port-au-Prince, and they were able to fly him straight back to North Carolina to the medical center at Camp Lejeune, and he was able to keep his arm. But if they would have had to treat him at the hospital in Haiti, he probably would have lost his arm below the elbow. So anyway, Taylor comes back from Haiti somewhere around October, November of '04. And he came to see us, and his eyes were the size of softballs. He says to me, Dad, you're not going to believe what we saw. And I knew in the back of my mind what I was hearing on the news, and I knew he hadn't seen anything yet, because he had told me already that they're going to work up and they're going to go to Fallujah. And so in December of '04, he came to our home and he spent Christmas with us. And on New Year's Day 2005, his buddy that he went through boot camp with, who was also stationed in North Carolina, came to our house to pick him up, and we stood in the foyer of our home, and all 5 of us joined hands, and we prayed for their safety, we prayed for their well-being, we prayed blessings over what their service would be. And he left. And so he called every opportunity that he could, and we had as many conversations as we could. And on May 9th of 2005, they were in arrears of an operation called Operation Matador. They were trying to seal the Syrian border from the terrorists and the weapons coming across. And they had taken a farmhouse as an operational point, and as they were standing watch, making sure nothing bad was happening, apparently the terrorists had eyes on them and had fired mortars toward our group of Marines. And just where Taylor and his Marine friend, Marcus Mate, were standing, the mortar hit, and it killed them both. And as quickly as Taylor was hit, he was gone. So the good news there was that he didn't suffer. The bad news is, of course, we lost him. We lost Marcus. And about 12:15 that night, it was a beautiful spring day. I had all the windows open because I, hate the air conditioner, hate the furnace, love all the fresh air. I'm in bed, been there for about a half an hour, not falling asleep, and I hear a car pull up. And there's hardly any traffic on the street. We live at the end of a cul-de-sac. And then I hear 2 car doors close. And then I hear somebody say, "Call me back on my Marine Corps Nextel." And my wife Carol says to me, "What's going on?" And I said, "Oh, I think Alec, our neighbor, came home." Alec was a Marine, and he was in Afghanistan, and I knew that he was due to come home. And then the next thing we know, our doorbell rang. And it was 2 Marines in their Class A uniforms, and they proceeded to tell us that Taylor had died during combat operations outside of Fallujah in the Al-Anbar province. And so our lives changed forever. Our world stopped in an instant. So my message here today is not a message of sadness. My message here today is a message of hope. It's a message of persevering. It's a message of overcoming. Because we were faced with a choice to make. Were we going to let this destroy us? Which it easily could. Everybody in here has lost somebody that they love. I know that. Grief is in all of our lives, and we all handle grief differently. But we had to make a decision that day. How would we embrace this? How would we get through this? How would we overcome this? And so, as we were trying to figure all that out, it took approximately 10 days for Taylor's body to come home from Iraq. He had to go from Iraq to the military mortuary in Dover, Delaware, and then come to Cincinnati. And the local Cincinnati newspaper printed an article on the front page with his photo talking about he was the first Marine from Greater Cincinnati killed in the War on Terror. And so I was reading the article. I thought, wow, they're honoring him, great. But then the author did something that just really broke my heart. The author numbered him, and I think it was 3750 or whatever. He was the 3750 American military service person killed in the current War on Terror. And it just broke my heart. But I gave the author of the story the benefit of the doubt, and I finished the article, and it ended with this. It ended with, there are 3 times as many injured or wounded. And that never occurred to me. So I said to my wife, Carol, I said, we are going to make something positive happen out of this. We can't help Taylor, but we can help his brothers and sisters in arms. And so we have, we had a funeral at the high school in the arena. His graduating class was somewhere between 700 and 800 students. So there were 3 classes at that school, so it was a rather large school. The arena sat 4,500 people, and they allowed us to have his funeral in the arena there. And we asked people not to send flowers. In lieu, we asked for donations that we would contribute to the injured and the wounded. And there's lots of many good organizations that have been helping the injured and wounded. And there was an organization that had started in Cincinnati. It was called Impact a Hero. And through his visitation and funeral with the donations, we made a contribution of $15,000 to Impact a Hero. And they have made a huge difference in the lives of our wounded warriors. And so then somebody in our community had read the article and went down to our community foundation and gave $5,000 of their own money to start a scholarship fund at the community foundation. And so when we got wind of that, we decided that we would try to make the scholarship fund into something that was very active, that we could affect the lives of high school students. And so what we do is we send out an application to any of the students that would like to apply. There's no need base, no any specific requirement, but they have to write an essay on what freedom and patriotism means to them. And this year, here in 2018, we gave our 63rd, 64th, and 65th scholarship at Fairfield High School. A minimum of $1,000, a lot of them were $2,500, just depends upon how much money we were able to raise. So Saturday was the 243rd birthday of the Marine Corps. And so we had our 14th annual 5K walk, run, and roll. And we raised money to continue to give scholarships. And also, we had our event at a location called the Joe Nuxall Miracle League Field. And the Miracle League Field is a rubberized play field where kids from all abilities can come play baseball. And if a kid is in a wheelchair, they can navigate the wheelchair across the rubberized surface really easy. If the child can't swing the bat, we have a mechanical bat, they can push a button. If they can't push the button, there's a tube they can blow in and the bat will swing and hit the ball off the tee. This past year, over 1,500 kids age 7 to 70, special need, came and played on those fields. And we have just tried to take this terrible thing from the loss of our son and make an impact in the lives of others by doing something good. And so the Miracle League Field dedicated one of the fields in Taylor's memory. There's a photo of him on the wall in left field, and it must be 20 feet tall, not the wall, the photo. And he is honored. Our community has come out and honored him so very well, and I can not say thank you enough. And so, before I finish, I want to show you something. This is the photo that's on the wall. And this was his Marine Corps boot camp photo. And this is how most everybody who never met him remembers him. But then, there's a Vietnam veteran who has committed to drawing portraits of every one of them who've given their lives in the current war on terror. And here's the portrait, it's a pencil portrait that he drew. This is a copy that he drew of Taylor. And this is how I remember him. And he hasn't drawn all of them yet, but he's working every day drawing. And his name is Michael Ray. He's a Marine Corps Vietnam veteran. And in spite of our loss, not just from Michael, but from our community and for the opportunity here today, we have truly been blessed in spite of our loss. And so this is a message for you all to realize that you can overcome, that you can persevere. It's never perfect. It's not always easy. But if we can persevere, if we can overcome, anybody can. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Brzezinski, for sharing that story with us today. Mr. Clark, if I could get you to bring the house lights up. Mr. Adele over here. Tradition, we'd like to have our veterans that are with us today introduce themselves, give you your branch of military service, and maybe when you served for our students. Thank you.
Mark Pritchard, U.S. Army, 89 to 92.
Jamie Love, U.S. Army, 1990, 1994.
Rick Metz, U.S. Navy, 69 to 75.
Ken Brink, Navy, 62, 66.
Jeff Root, Air Force through the 80s and 90s. I'm the father of Lance and Sierra and host father of Turbo.
I'm Lawrence Height. I was in the U.S. Army from 1969 to 1991. And my granddaughter, Karen Grimm, and my grandson, Lawson Grimm. Who
Jerry Kingsbury, 1971 to 73, U.S. Army.
Jason McQuillan, U.S. Army, 2000 to 2008.
Ken Tunnerman, U.S. Army, 1968 to 1970. I would like to say hi to Faye Stinner and Tristan Braz and his friends.
Dave Smith, U.S. Army, 1966 to 1969.
Al Shepner, U.S. Army, 1965 to 67. And this is my son-in-law, Mike.
Mike Freestone, U.S. Air Force, 1989 to 2009. And Justin Freestone is my son.
Bruce Bernath, U.S. Army, 1970 to 72. Amy is my daughter.
The Waseon High School Band will play the melody for each branch of service. Again, if able, I would ask the veterans to stand when your melody is played. applause for our speaker, Mr. John Krasinski, and all of our veterans. Attention, students, as you leave, we have bookmarks for you as you proceed to fourth period. So at this time, you are dismissed. Have a great day.